Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are taking a deep breath and plunging headfirst into one of the most fraught journalistic firestorms in recent memory.
A big one.
Yeah, a really big one. It involves 60 Minutes, one of the most respected news programs in American history, and a huge government policy controversy.
Right.
So the sources we've stacked up for you are, well, they're pretty telling. We have internal network memos, the leaked segment transcript itself.
And reports from human rights organizations, plus these really detailed filings on the corporate media mergers going on in the background.
Exactly. They all tell a story of an investigation that was deemed too hot to handle. We're talking about a segment called Inside CECOT. It was just completely pulled from broadcast hours before airtime.
But the kicker, the part that made this whole thing blow up, is that the finished segment was accidentally streamed online.
View a Canadian distributor of all things, so it just defied the network's decision to bury it.
And that's our mission today, really. It's kind of split down the middle. On one side, we have to get into the shocking facts from the report, the accounts of torture and abuse suffered by Venezuelan deportees inside this mega prison in El Salvador, CECOT.
And on the other side?
On the other side is the debate over corporate ownership, censorship, and journalistic integrity that led to the story being spiked in the first place. The goal is to understand not just what was revealed, but why someone tried to suppress it.
Okay, so let's unpack the timeline. This all went down on Sunday, December 22, 2025. The segment, which was reported by the veteran correspondent Sharon Alfonsi.
Who is very highly regarded.
Her piece was pulled just 3 hours before it was supposed to air. And that decision came straight from the top, from CBS News editor-in-chief Bari Weiss.
Right. And the official reasons that were given, they all centered on journalistic rigor. Weiss said the story, quote, was not ready.
Not ready.
She said it lacked sufficient context, needed additional reporting, and her main point was that it was missing critical voices. Specifically, an on-the-record comment from the Trump administration.
So she's saying her job is just to make sure stories are the best they can be.
And that this piece didn't advance the ball beyond what was already out there.
Right, hold on. Advance the ball. Is that a real journalistic standard? That a story with new verified facts about, a pretty horrific government policy has to advance the ball? Or is that just a convenient excuse?
That is the exact question that started the internal firestorm. Alfonsi and her team. They pushed back immediately. They argued the story was completely factually correct, which is, the baseline.
Of course.
They also pointed out that this report had already been screened 5 times. And critically, it was signed off on by both CBS lawyers and the Standards and Practices Division.
So S&P cleared it. That means the network's own ethics people and lawyers said the facts were solid.
Exactly. So Alfonsi's point was clear. Pulling it wasn't really an editorial decision. It felt like a political one.
And that ties right back to Weiss's reason about lacking an administration comment.
Precisely. This gets to a really fundamental journalistic principle. Alfonsi's team had requested comment. They went to the White House, to DHS, to the State Department.
Yeah.
They all refused. So Alfonsi's critique was, look, if an administration just refusing to comment becomes a valid reason to kill a verified story, well, you've just handed the government a kill switch for any inconvenient reporting.
Wow. That's terrifying. It flips the whole responsibility of the press.
It does. It turns investigative journalism from a watchdog into a process where the target of the investigation basically has a veto.
You're no longer a reporter, you're just a stenographer.
That's what she said. The difference between being an investigative powerhouse and a stenographer for the state.
And despite all this effort to bury the piece, it leaked almost immediately. Then Paramount's content team had to play whack-a-mole, trying to scrub it from the internet.
The irony is it's staggering. A Canadian affiliate, Global Television Network, mistakenly streamed it on their app.
So people just grabbed it,
shared it everywhere. By trying to suppress the story, CBS basically guaranteed it got way more attention than if it had just aired on a Sunday night.
Okay, so while the corporate drama is fascinating, we have to talk about what they were actually trying to hide. Let's pivot to the content of the report itself.
Right.
The story was about the Trump administration's immigration crackdown, focusing on Venezuelan men deported to this prison in El Salvador, CECOT, using a really old, rarely used power.
The Alien Enemies Act. It's a key detail. It's this old wartime statute that lets the government remove non-citizens they call dangerous without the usual due process.
So it's a shortcut.
A massive shortcut. It bypasses the normal reviews, which is why it sparked this huge ongoing legal battle.
And between March and April 2025, the U.S. deported 252 Venezuelan men, calling them gang members or terrorists.
And at the same time, the U.S. struck a deal to pay El Salvador $4.7 million to house them at CECOT.
So let's talk about CECOT. It's the Centro de Confinamiento del Terrorismo.
It's this massive maximum security prison. It was built as part of President Bukele's anti-gang crackdown in El Salvador. It's designed to hold an incredible 40,000 inmates.
And the conditions inside, this is what made the segment so explosive. The men said when they arrived, they were shackled, paraded for cameras, heads shaved.
And greeted by the director who told them, "Welcome to hell.
Yeah.
I'll make sure you never leave."
Unbelievable. One of the deportees, a college student named Luis Munoz Pinto, he recalled just thinking, you already know you're in hell.
And the report documented systematic abuse. Munoz Pinto said he was beaten by 4 guards, his face slammed against a wall so hard it broke a tooth.
God.
Others reported physical and sexual abuse, guards hitting their private parts. Another man, William Lazaro Sanchez, said he was forced into stress positions like kneeling for 24 hours straight.
24 hours. And if they didn't comply, there was this place called the Island.
Yes. The island was a pitch-black, unventilated isolation cell. And the report detailed how guards would go in and beat prisoners every half hour around the clock.
To break them.
To traumatize them, prevent sleep. And on top of that, you have lights on 247, which violates UN standards, and drinking super filthy water from the same source as the toilets.
This is the kind of reporting that should be prioritized, not buried, especially since U.S. taxpayer money was funding it.
That's right. That $4.7 million payment connects it directly back to the U.S.
Now, in stark contrast to all of this, the administration was painting a very different picture of these men.
Oh, absolutely. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt called them heinous monsters, rapists, murderers, kidnappers, sexual assaulters, predators.
A pretty extreme description.
And one that was immediately dismantled by the evidence gathered by Alfonsi's team in Human Rights Watch. HRW did an 81-page report. They reviewed ICE data, cross-referenced databases.
And what did they find?
Their findings were undeniable. Nearly half of the Venezuelan men deported had 0 criminal history. None.
Half. That's a staggering failure rate for an operation targeting heinous monsters. What about violent crime?
Even thinner. The investigation found that only 8 of the 252 men, so that 3 or 4%, had actually been convicted of a violent or even potentially violent crime.
So the vast majority weren't violent criminals.
Right. I mean, they found 70 men with pending charges, but pending charges can be anything from an immigration violation to petty theft. It's a misleading statistic.
And the way they were selected in the first place, the criteria for who gets sent to this, hell, that was also deeply flawed, wasn't it?
Critically flawed. And this is a really important detail for you to grasp.
Mm-hmm.
Agents used a point system to label guys as members of the Tren de Aragua gang.
A point system.
Yeah, but it was incredibly arbitrary. For example, just having tattoos could earn you 4 points toward deportation.
Wait, any tattoos or specific gang tattoos?
That's the thing, any tattoos. The criminologist they consulted pointed out that this gang, TDA, doesn't even really use tattoos for membership ID, not like MS-13.
So a tattoo of your mom's name could be weighted the same as a pending charge. That seems deliberately designed to cast as wide a net as possible.
Exactly. It seems designed to maximize deportations, not to accurately identify dangerous gang members. One deportee, Luis Munoz Pinto, even quoted an agent who looked at his non-gang tattoos and just said, "But you are Venezuelan."
Wow. That one quote says everything. Nationality, not criminality, was the real test.
It seems so. And this whole thing ties back to the administration's own visuals, specifically DHS Secretary Kristi Noem's visit there in March.
Ah, yes. She recorded that video thanking El Salvador for locking up U.S. terrorists.
Right. But that video was a huge part of the 60 Minutes report because the team proved it was a fabrication.
What do you mean?
The UC Berkeley Human Rights Center Investigations Lab verified that the heavily tattooed men standing behind her in that video, they weren't the Venezuelan deportees. They were Salvadoran MS-13 members.
They staged it. They staged the visual evidence to sell their narrative.
And the 60 Minutes team proved it.
Okay, let's quickly cover the resolution for the men themselves before we get back to the corporate side.
They were eventually released from CECOT in July 2025. They were sent back to Caracas as part of a prisoner swap for 10 Americans being held in Venezuela.
So they got out, but that doesn't resolve the bigger issue here, the journalistic one.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Because this whole editorial crisis was happening right in the middle of these massive corporate shifts. In August 2025, Skydance Media and Paramount Global merged,
which put CBS under the control of David Ellison.
whose father, Larry Ellison, is a major donor and political ally of Donald Trump.
And the deal itself included a very strange provision, a $16 million settlement of a Trump lawsuit against 60 Minutes.
A lawsuit that, well, most legal observers thought had almost no chance of winning in court.
So that $16 million wasn't really a legal settlement.
It looks more like a corporate transaction. The cost of smoothing the regulatory path for your massive merger. When you're asking the government to approve a deal that big, you become, let's say, very sensitive to negative press that might upset the administration.
And the pressure was even higher because they were also trying to buy Warner Bros. Discovery at the time.
The parent company of CNN. So we're talking about another multi-billion-dollar deal needing even more regulatory approval.
So if you're a corporate executive in that position, the incentive is pretty clear. Avoid any and all political headaches.
It's blindingly clear. And Alfonsi saw it immediately. She actually compared it to the darkest moment in 60 Minutes history, spiking the Jeffrey Wiggin tobacco interview.
Which was also done to appease corporate interests and almost destroyed the show's credibility.
That's the comparison she made. She was arguing that pulling this story was done for political optics rather than legal ones, simply to shield an administration. This wasn't about facts, it was about the stock price.
And that's the ultimate takeaway for you, the listener, isn't it? This is a perfect case study of how concentrated media ownership can create these huge vulnerabilities for real investigative reporting.
It is. When the administration refuses to comment, the very reason the editor-in-chief gave for pulling this story, that refusal becomes a political tool. It gives powerful people a veto over inconvenient truths, especially when the network's corporate bosses are looking for political favors.
Absolutely. So we've covered the whole spectrum here, the incredible reporting on torture and flawed policy, right alongside the corporate pressure that led to its suppression and then that accidental leak.
And the insight here really goes beyond just this one story. We know the administration is arranging more deals to deport people to other countries, like South Sudan and Uganda, nations with, well-documented histories of prisoner abuse. So the final question we want to leave you with is this. If reporters like Alfonsi, with the full backing of their legal teams, can be denied airtime on a major network because of corporate politics, how can you trust the integrity of future reporting on these new deportation programs? What steps can citizens take to ensure transparency when information like this is being so actively hidden?